Thank you for joining us tonight. This is a public meeting hosted by the St. Johns River Water Management District. I'm Dr. Dean Doberful with the district's Bureau of Water Resources. Tonight we'll be hearing from the district's contractor for an innovative pilot project at Lake Minneola to address harmful algal blooms. Following the presentation, there will be a question and answer session. This virtual public meeting is being recorded and will be posted on our website, SJRWMD.com. Before we begin, some housekeeping information. All audience members will be muted during the presentation. We will compile all questions and comments through the question box located in the control panel to the left of your screen. That may be on your right on some setups. Again, we will answer questions and read any comments following the main presentation. Before we hear the main project presentation, I want to summarize the steps that got us to this point. Governor DeSantis issued Executive Order 19-12 on January 10th, 2019. Among the many funding and statutory initiatives within that order was the creation of the Blue-Green Algae Task Force, made up of leading scientific professionals in the state and intended to help guide the state's effort to control blue-green algae. One of the task force's core recommendations was investing in a diverse portfolio of technologies to control algae. In response to this recommendation, the Department of Environmental Protection issued a solicitation for innovative project proposals from local governments. The Water Management District submitted Blue-Green's proposal on December 6, 2019. And on February 3rd, 2020, DEP announced that the Lake Minneola pilot project had been selected for funding, along with several other projects across the state. With that, I would like to introduce Dr. Waleed Nasser and Dr. Moshe Harrell with Blue-Green Water Technologies, who will walk us through the specifics of the Lake Minneola project. So over to you, Waleed.
Over to me, Eyal.
Eyal, oh, sorry.
It's okay, no worries. I'll take it from here. Thank you, Dr. Doberfel. My name is Eyal Harel. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Blue-Green Water Technologies. With me here this evening are Professor Aaron Kaplan from the Hebrew University, one of the leading scientists in the world in the research of cyanobacteria. Dr. Moshe Harel, Blue-Green's CTO, founder and inventor, and Dr. Waleed Nasser, Blue-Green's US Director of Operations. First of all, allow me to say that we're very happy and extremely excited to be here this evening. Waleed, if you can bring down actually 2 slides. Blue-Green Water Technologies is an Israeli company. In the last 3 years, we've been commercializing products for the treatment and remediation of harmful algal blooms all over the world. We're very excited to be this evening here in Minneola, which is the latest of a string of projects we've been executing all over the world. We'll give you a little bit of details of these projects, bigger projects, including ones in China 2 months ago in a lake that is 1.5 times the size of Minneola, and 4 months ago a lake half the size of Minneola, sizable lakes that we consider or are considered internationally as untreatable. We started this about a year ago with a project in Chippewa Lake, not far away, in the state of Ohio, where we treated a lake of roughly 330 acres. It was a big success, and the lake is still bloom-free until today. Our approach is really to empower local communities and to allow them to enjoy their water resources bloom-free. We provide surgical, very targeted treatments, and Dr. Nasser will provide ample detail moving forward in this presentation in order to restore the biodiverse environment, into the aquatic environment of the lake, in a sense, healing its immune system to self-guard itself against resurgences of cyanobacterial blooms in order to maintain these results over long periods of time. Walid, next. So as I mentioned before, we've done thousands of commercial applications by now, and our project in Minneola is our first project in Florida. And I'll move it now to Dr. Nasser to give more details about what exactly we're planning to do and how we're planning to do it within the scope of this project.
Thank you, Eyal, and good evening, everyone from Houston, Texas, my hometown for the past 20 years. I'm a microbiologist by training, infectious diseases and sequencing. I've been consulting for the company for the past 5 years, and I joined full force as Director of Operations in the US since February of 2019. And today I'm going to talk to you about the keys to a successful treatment by blue-green water technologies. We know when to treat, where to treat, and how to treat. And this is our specialty. And the treatment that we provide is through the Lake Guard technology, namely the product called the Lake Guard Oxy. The Lake Guard Oxy is comprised of time-tested algicide and time-tested for efficacy and for safety. And what we did with the technology is micro-encapsulated with a smart coating to allow the product to float and time release. And the releasing agent that is time release is the hydrogen peroxide, which is its active ingredient. The product as a whole is certified and is approved by many different agencies, namely the US EPA, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, and it is certified by the NSF 60 standard for treatment in drinking water. The formulation of the floating and time release mechanism will allow the product to stay on the surface and not sink to the bottom or get wasted away where it's supposed to be. The product, once it floats, it's the closest to these microorganisms that are photosynthetic microorganisms that reside in the upper layers of the water column. The floating mechanism will also allow for an easy application. In this video, you can see how we apply the product. The product can be applied manually from a boat or actually, and also from a plane or a duster. For Lake Minneola, we're probably going to focus on application through a boat. So what we do is we apply the product upwind and up current and allow the natural movement of the winds and currents to disperse it throughout the lake. The product itself will mimic cyanobacterial movement in the water. It will be controlled by the same forces that controls cyanobacterial drifting in the waters. And once the product is released to the water, it will home in and concentrate around cyanobacterial aggregates while releasing its active ingredient. And by doing so, it will exert a prolonged low-grade oxidative stress by the time release of the hydrogen peroxide granule. The product, therefore, is a targeted treatment, not only because it targets the spatial aspect of the cyanobacteria, but also because of this low-grade oxidative prolonged stress. It's because of this low-grade prolonged oxidative stress that will act primarily on cyanobacterial cells. And this prolonged oxidative stress is through the time release of the hydrogen peroxide. The hydrogen peroxide concentration in the water at any given moment is extremely low. It's just a fraction of 1 part per million. It's 2 to the 1,000 or 8 to the 1,000 part per million only. But this concentration is enough for the oxidative stress to act primarily on cyanobacteria. And these hydrogen peroxide molecules will decompose quickly into water and oxygen. Therefore, it's considered an eco-friendly compound because it does not persist or accumulate in the environment. So the unique delivery mechanism of this product will allow us to treat large lakes. This is the only product that is scalable to treat lakes in the hundreds and thousands of acres in size. And our product can be quickly applied for a quick response for any evolving algal bloom. And it also has an immediate results. You can see results within 24 to 72 hours. Our product is selective because this low-grade prolonged oxidative stress that will act primarily on the cyanobacteria, because that low-grade oxidative stress will trigger the biological programmed cell death in cyanobacteria only. And when it does so, it will result in the collapse of the cyanobacterial community. I'm sure Professor Aaron Kaplan from the Hebrew University that spent a significant portion of his career studying this phenomenon can elaborate more after this talk. And once we collapse the cyanobacteria, now we allow beneficial green algae to thrive in its place. And the thriving and growing beneficial green algae is an important aspect of our treatment for different reasons. These growing beneficial green algae will type important nutrients away from the cyanobacteria, and its biomass will prevent the resurgence of the cyanobacteria infection to the waters. So by doing so, we in a way give a boost to the immune system of the lake and allow it to fend off cyanobacterial resurgence for longer periods of time. So therefore, our main goal is to allow the beneficial green algae to grow and keep the lake healthy and the water safe for all. This product is eco-friendly and it's safe for humans and pets. So our company, as Ayal mentioned, was based in Israel, and we have thousands of applications there, but we are also active in the 4 continents of the world. In this example, I'm sharing with you our treatment from last year in Chippewa Lake in Ohio. It's a 330-acre lake. It's the largest inland lake in Ohio. And when we approached them back in August of 2019, the community there couldn't even enjoy the lake because of severe algal blooms throughout the years. They probably enjoyed the lake through the open season, maybe 2 to 3 weeks a year. So when we approached them in August 2019, and we had our interventional treatment, we eliminated the cyanobacteria in the waters and allowed the beneficial green algae to take over and keep the lake healthy. The beneficial green algae are an important aspect because they also support higher organisms. They are a food source for the fish population in the lake as well. So overall, everybody now is enjoying a healthy lake since August of 2019. The second example I want to give to you is from Roteplat Dam in South Africa. The video that we watched earlier is actually from that treatment we had in February of 2020. That was during the end of the summer in the Southern Hemisphere. The dam has a unique shape. It's 1,100 acres in size, just a little bit bigger than half of the size of Lake Minneola. And if you see the true image, this is a true satellite imagery of the dam on February 26, 2020, just before our treatment. And you can actually see the cyanobacteria, you can actually see it from space. We don't even need processing to be able to do it. This lake is difficult, not because of its shape, but because of physical barriers that will prevent active presence in certain regions of the lake so we can apply the treatment. But that was not a challenge to our floating time releasing product, because when we apply the product in strategic position, we allow the natural movement to disperse it throughout the dam. And here are the pictures just before the treatment. And these are the pictures on March 7, just in time that the community had a rowing competition. And you can see the pictures before and after. The last example I want to share with you is actually from just last month in the Hunan province of China. It's a 3,000 acres in size, about 50% bigger than Lake Minneola. And this lake used to be thriving aquaculture. They used to have a lot of fisheries and a lot of activities over there, but due to severe algal blooms over the years, this aquaculture has had to stop, and because of the cyanotoxins that are present in the water. So on June 6, just last month, this is the lake before the treatment. And I forgot to mention earlier figures. So this is a heat map. The warmer the colors, the higher the intensity of the cyanobacteria in the lake. So this processing through our lake guard view will allow us to see concentrations or intensity of cyanobacteria throughout the lake. And before the treatment on June 6, you can see high intensity pockets throughout the lake. Only 24 hours after the treatment, on June 7th, you can see significant reduction on cyanobacterial intensity, and the improvement in the lake continued on for several days to see that actually 5 days after the treatment, the lake is practically bloom-free. So the colder colors represent undetectable level or very low levels of cyanobacteria. So now the 6 million residents of Nanhu Lake can now enjoy a healthy and clean lake after years and years of severe toxic blooms. So this is images of Lake Minneola. Were taken back in March 2020, courtesy of Mr. Fritz Sommer, who forwarded these pictures to local authorities that forwarded to us. Our goal is to prevent these algal blooms from happening altogether, from these aggregates of cyanobacteria that are toxic to humans and pets, and can devastate also the environment from happening altogether. And the way we're going to do that is by constant monitoring. So we have the lake guard view that we can monitor the progress of the lake and the intensity level of cyanobacteria. As an example, you have figures from May 28 and June 2020 of this year. This is the true color, the true image, and this is the processed images through our lake guard view. And you can see significant increase just within 4 weeks from 1 month to another. What we are trying to do here is to keep a close eye on these cyanobacterial intensity and respond as quickly as possible. And this satellite imagery is also going to be complemented by drone pictures, visual inspection, and as well as in situ measurements. We're going to take weekly in situ measurements from the water, from different points around the lake, and as well as water samples that are going to be processed by 2 independent and certified laboratories. And once we detect an evolving algal bloom, we're going to have an immediate response. And in this example here, we show if there's an algal bloom in the northern western side of the lake, we can broadcast the product upwind and upcurrent and let the natural movement disperse it throughout that region and then eliminate that evolving algal bloom. So our immediate response will also show immediate results to keep the water safe for all to use and enjoy. In this endeavor, we are actually going to join forces with Modica and Associates. It's headed by Mr. Clark Modica. Clark is a resident of the area, he's a resident of Claremont, and I believe his grandfather owned the lake, owned the house in the lake. So he's not just only a resident, he's a stakeholder, and he has the best interest of the lake in his mind when we do it. So Modica and Associates will help us throughout this project that's going to take about 8 months in the monitoring and as well as a product application. I want to finish by actually express our deepest gratitude to all the dedicated officials in the state of Florida. As Dr. Deverfall mentioned, we've been negotiating with them since last year, and those dedicated officials made sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed before we move on to the next project, and they made sure everything's in place before we move on to this treatment. And with that, I would like to thank Governor Ron DeSantis for his initiative, the Florida legislator and the Lake County legislative delegation for securing the funding, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, our partners, San John River Water Management District, Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and Lake County Water Authority. We dedicated an email just for this project for all the residents, all the stakeholders around the lake to give their input and notify us at any point that they cite an algal bloom in the lake. So our rapid response team can contact Modica and Associates so they can respond quickly to that evolving bloom. And that email is at minneola@bgtex.com. And with that, I would like to thank you all, and we'll take any questions if you have any.
With your permission, I'd just like to take a few minutes and emphasize this last aspect. Thank you, Dr. Nasser. We consider this treatment a collaboration between Blue-Green Water Technologies and the local community. Our goal, our promise, is to provide the local community with a bloom-free lake. As Dr. Nasser detailed in his presentation, we're going to use multiple state-of-the-art technologies in order to ensure that you can enjoy the lake throughout the season without any risk of exposing yourself to a toxic bloom. And we're going to make every effort in order to meet that promise. However, technologies have their limitations. Satellite imagery depends on the lack of clouds. In situ samplings are taken every couple of days, sometimes every week or so, and there are gaps in between, and we may miss something. And we urge you, the local stakeholders that live around the lake, that go swimming, recreating, fishing, what have you around the lake, to the extent that you see something that is unusual, foam, scum, whatever that looks different, out of the ordinary, we highly encourage you to communicate with us these issues. We will send somebody immediately to inspect the area. You can send us photos, and we will be happy to respond immediately, and to the extent needed, take care of that specific area as soon as possible in order to avoid its deterioration into a full-blown bloom, which is in everybody's interest. So we appreciate everybody's cooperation. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Nasser, Dr. Errol. Now I want the district's project manager, Tiffany Trent. She will begin our question and answer session. She'll be reading questions, and applicable Blue-Green staff will answer those questions. So over to you, Tiffany.
Thank you very much, Dean, and thank you, Drs. Harel and Nasser, for that wonderful presentation. I'm going to read off the audience questions at this time, and I would just like to remind our presenters if you could keep your webcams on while you're addressing the questions. And to our audience members, we'll try to get through as many of these questions as we can this evening, but if we run out of time, then we will post and answer these questions at a later time on our website. So I'll start with the first question, and this is from James Kinsler, and I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. And his question is, was previous testing performed on Lake Minneola by Blue Green?
Dr. Nasser?
Yes, we did. So when you saw those pictures of those algal blooms from March 2020 from Mr. Fritz Summers, we were there just a week before that. Our CEO, Eyal Harel, and myself were there. And we just looked quickly at the lake, and we looked around the lake, and we saw scum actually forming in the northern side. And then within a few days, this is what we're talking about, of having continuous monitoring at the same time, you know, whether it's satellite imagery, drones, in situ samplings, and this. And then keeping the eye of our Monica and associates around the lake and asking the public also to help us locate any scum. So within 3 days, the things just spread throughout the lake. The wind changed, and then I believe, and I forgot to mention this, at that time, there was it coincided with the triathlon, and I believe the triathlon was canceled just because of these algal blooms, at least the swimming portion, because it got to the beach side. So yes, we did look at it quickly. We have historical data from San John Rivers Water Management District. We're going to look at our CEO, Moshe Harel, and myself were in the lake just a couple of weeks ago. We met with Monica and associate, we met with Mr. Clark, and we went on the boat several times to determine sampling points, to determine wind currents and movements, to see how the geology of the place. But most importantly, this is just preliminary things that we want to do. Once we start the project, we're going to spend intensive 2 weeks to whether, you know, through the certified laboratories I mentioned, to test those water samples, to look at the conditions in the water, to look at any wind current movements, to see what other aspects that we need to be focusing on. Most importantly, you know, there's an inlet to this, so the water flows from the south and goes to the north, but if there's a change in wind, we notice that actually it will reverse. So we need to keep an eye on these inlets and outlets as a source maybe of contamination, so we can see if there's a source of contamination coming to the lake. We have to keep a quick eye on so we can respond quickly. Because what I forgot to mention is we want to respond as soon as possible. We don't want the blooms to spread throughout the lake. We want to localize it, treat it locally and quickly, and keep the lake bloom-free, clean, safe for everyone to use.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nasser. We'll go on to the next question. This is from Lorraine Birch, and Lorraine asks, how does it, meaning the product, tie up nutrients, phosphorus, and nitrogen? And what is the longest time that this treatment has been effective?
Dr. Harel?
So I will start with the second question. We are still writing the book. So when we applied the product in last year in Chippewa Lake in Ohio, we didn't know that it will last so long, as well as the same with another treatment that was applied in Kazan, Russia, about 2 years ago. That still the lake is still in a very good shape. And the reason, and that brings me to the first question, is that we basically, and Dr. Nasser mentioned it before, we basically restore the phytoplankton biodiversity in the lake. And by doing so, on one hand, we reduce the cyanobacterial harmful bacteria from the lake. Secondly, we let algae, the beneficial algae, to take over and actually fight against the resurgence of the cyanobacteria. And thirdly, and that's the point, those algae, beneficial algae, consume the phosphates and nitrates and whatever any other elements that cyanobacteria uses, and is another reason why the cyanobacteria cannot resurgence so easily.
Great, thank
you. Just to complement on Dr. Harel's answer, essentially speaking, there are different communities within the lake that fight over the same resources. So there's an excess amount of resources in the lake, and under normal conditions, cyanobacteria, being better scavengers, are able to use it to their advantage and take hold of the entire aquatic environment, and suppress the ability of other phytoplankton species to thrive. By being able to reduce these cyanobacterial toxic communities that have been building up in the lake, by the way, not on an annual basis, but from year to year, they've been growing for years, perhaps decades, perhaps centuries, to the state where they are today. By being able to reduce those toxic species below dangerous levels, we reopen the court, so to speak, back to competition. And what we've seen again in many setups all over the world is a similar phenomenon where by opening this court, non-toxic species could take over the ecological niche and serve their natural biological purpose as competing on the same resources, on those nitrates and phosphates, from getting to the hands, so to speak, of the toxic species.
Great, thank you for that expansion, Dr. Harel. We'll go on to the next question, and this is from Cynthia Davis. And Cynthia asks, how many applications will be needed?
That's a good question. We can never tell. That's the truth. We will start with the first initial treatment this beginning of this coming September. We will see the effect on the cyanobacterial population. The concentration that we are talking are the one that Dr. Nasser mentioned in his presentation a few minutes ago. And then we take it by year. Basically, we talked about the community's involvement, but we are quite confident in our ability to control the bloom whatsoever. So it may be on a monthly basis, probably maybe once every 2 months. Depends how good we were in restoring the beneficial algal population.
I'd like to add again another aspect of our treatment and clarify it. As I've mentioned before, the condition in the lake right now is that you have a massive inoculum of bacteria that has been multiplying for many years uninterruptedly. This is the current condition, and it manifests itself every now and then in the form that you've been experiencing around the lake, and they continue to multiply. Essentially, they don't go anywhere. They stay in the ecosystem, and they just continue to multiply. Our initial treatment, which we are planning for the beginning of September, is going to be an interventional treatment. So it's a bit of a more aggressive, still below the radar in terms of concentrations, but it's a little bit a more aggressive treatment designed to reduce the high bacterial levels below dangerous levels. So we're kind of restarting the healing process within the lake. Once that is achieved, once we've been able to reduce the numbers of the bacteria, of the toxic bacteria in the water, what we are expecting to see is green algae numbers starting to pick up, and as I mentioned before, serve their natural purposes. Now, there may be certain hotspots over the period of the next months where cyanobacteria is fighting back, gaining ground, so to speak. And in those specific areas, we're going to make very, very localized, very small treatments that in all likelihood, most of you will not be even able to identify. The granules, you've seen the movie, the granules are extremely small. The amount that is used in the water is very small, so they disperse naturally in the water, and it's very difficult to even identify the treatment itself. The particles concentrate where they need to concentrate, they do what they need to do, and so that can be something that happens from time to time, but it's very difficult to predict at this point how many treatments exactly we're going to require in any specific setup.
One you just mentioned the particles moving in the water. They will be completely disintegrate in the water system within hours. So 2 to 4 hours probably, and there is literally nothing.
Great, thank you both very much for that explanation. We do have several questions from single audience members. So what I intend to do is try to get as many people's voices heard as possible. So I won't be reading directly down the list, but I'm going to try and select as many attendees' names as I possibly can within the time frame that we have. So I will read Cynthia Davis's next question because it will be a simple yes or no. Will Victory Point be treated as well? It flows into Lake Minneola.
Is what? I'm sorry?
Victory Point. Will Victory Point be treated as well? It flows into Lake Minneola.
I'm not sure that I know where or what is Victory Point. If it's within the area where we received the permits, so yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I will need to look at the map later on.
Okay. Well, we can kind of table that question and get back to it too online. Absolutely. Okay. All righty. And our next question is from Stephen Franklin, and Stephen asks, the bloom seems to have subsided and is no longer being reported by boaters. That doesn't mean it's gone though. When will treatment begin?
So as I said, the treatment is starting this coming September. The purpose is to rejuvenate the lake, restart it, and then we will keep on monitoring the lake until we see appearance of cyanobacterial bloom starts again, or cells in small quantities to address them specifically.
I think if I understand correctly the question, there is maybe maybe a bit of a misunderstanding as to what a bloom exactly is.
Okay.
And by international standards, US EPA and also Florida, a bloom is defined as 20,000 cells of bacterial cells, cyanobacterial cells per milliliter. Just for reference, so 20,000 cells per milliliter is what would look to the naked eye as clean water. So the fact that you're not seeing a bloom does not mean that there is no bloom in the water. For reference, Dr. Nasser mentioned earlier that we were on the shores of the lake, I think it was on the eastern side in February, was it? Dr.
It was
Nasser?
the first week of March.
Yeah, and it, to us, we know what to look for. The bloom was visible. Days before you saw it, the bloom was already visible to us. We saw the cells in the water. We could see the cells in the water. But to most people, they wouldn't and didn't recognize it at the time. So our intention is to make sure that you're safe, whether you see it or not. So as I mentioned before, we can miss, and then at the point in time when you can see it, it's high time for us, of course, to take action. But our intention is for you never to see anything. Our intention for you is to maintain cell density below dangerous levels. Our promise is to maintain toxin level below dangerous levels. That means you will keep having the water in a clean shape, not just visually, but biologically.
Just to emphasize what Al just mentioned, I mean, our main goal for blooming water technologies is the preventative treatment. And from our experience, preventative treatments actually will cause long-lasting results as well. So it's very important to attack the problem or to treat or control against the cyanobacterial evolving blooms as quickly as possible. And that's where our monitoring, your participation also is encouraged too. If you see any sighting of algal blooms, please let us know.
Just for the reference, as Eyal mentioned, the WHO and the US EPA adopted that approach that 20,000 cells per milliliter. Below that, above that, the water are dangerous for use. The pictures of the bloom that were shown here in the presentation, the cell concentration was probably in the range of 10 to the 10th, just to give you a reference. So 10 to the 5 is what is a warning signal, and 10 to the 10th is when the lake bloomed. It's that bad.
Right. Thank you all for that explanation. All right, we will go to Ron Hart next, and Ron asks, how long are you contracted to provide this service?
Until the end of March 2021.
2021, thank you. And I'm going to go next to Martha Harnett, and Martha asks, there are many marathons scheduled in Lake Minneola, and there's youth training for boat training. Will this be safe for these contests?
Yes. No problem.
We will make sure that the water will stay safe and clean for everybody to use.
Even during the application, there is no problem to keep on boating and whatever exercise you do or recreational in the lake. It's a good question. Thank you for asking.
Great, thank you. Next, we're going to go to Jason Danaher, and Jason asks, besides the email to notify staff of potential bloom, is there going to be a website uploaded daily or weekly on when analysis performed treatment is applied?
So we will announce applications that are above a certain quantity. I think it's 10 pounds per acre per the whole lake. But honestly, I don't think we will be there at any moment. So as far as I concern, as far as I think is going to work, it will not be needed.
So what Dr. Harel just meant, most of our application, hopefully, it's going to be spot treatments. So you'll not even notice when we're there. It's going to be for certain regions that we see that there's evolving bloom treated within a few hours. The product would have disappeared from from the lake. So, but only in major treatments we'll probably announce it. But we will weekly send to St. John Rivers all the monitoring results. If any treatment were done, we will post it. So hopefully St. John River will have an ongoing updates of the progress of the project and the treatment results.
And this is
Yes.
Dean Doverful. I'm going to jump in here, and we've already set up a project website on our SJRWMD.com site. So we will be able to post notable treatments and data and things, information that Blue Green supplies to us. So we will be making that available.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dean. Yeah. All right, our next question is from James Preston, and James asks, how will the oxidative stress that affects the algae also affect the other organisms living in the lake? Will it also affect beneficial algae in a negative way?
Great question. If you don't mind to stay with me another 2 or 3 hours, I will gladly explain the whole process. It is fascinating, actually fascinating biological characterization. To try to make a very long story into a short one, cyanobacteria are very, very sensitive to oxidative stress. Very, very sensitive. And our formulation provide a time release effect. So they basically feel small hammers of oxidative stress on their head. Now the rest of the rest of the organisms, including green algae, who are actually eukaryotic, beneficial algae, non-toxic ones, are not sensitive as even as close to how the way cyanobacteria are sensitive, and therefore and the rest of the animals the same way. They have many ways to overcome oxidative stress. Again, cyanobacteria do not have that. Now, once we apply the treatment with a special formulation using this minute concentration of oxidative stress using the H2O2 product, something very interesting happened within the whole population of cyanobacteria. They getting into what the scientists call programmed cell death. It's actually a suicidal event within the population. It's a very, very interesting phenomenon. Example for it in any organism in the evolutionary tree. And once that happens, the cyanobacteria signals themselves in signals to even naive populations that are present elsewhere in the water body to go into this autocatalytic cell death procedure. We trigger them into that, and the whole population collapses. So we can apply it in one place and basically see the result in a different place. It's amazing. I can tell you that people, and Professor Kaplan, for technical reasons, can hear me but cannot correspond. He would probably love to say a lot of more things about that. People have been showing that in 100 microliter tubes for years, and I show that in billions of gallons of water. It's an amazing phenomenon.
All right, but I want to jump in here. As much as we scientists really love 10 to the 10th and milliliters and biochemistry, we need to move on. We've got a few questions we need to get to.
Great, thank you for that. I'm going to move on now to Mary, and I apologize, Mary, I cannot pronounce your last name. I'll just call you Mary S. And Mary's question is, what was required to obtain a permit for application, and what type of permit, and who issued the permit? And I'd be happy to help fill in the blanks on this since I was involved in this process.
So please go ahead.
Yeah. So the Fwc issued the permit, and basically what was required was to fill out an online application with Blue Water Technologies credentials and some of their past work, and also a sort of like a management plan for the lake, how they intend to treat, what kind of parameters they're going to measure for, how often they're going to measure for, and how they are going to report that data. And also one of the our requirements is to also have a tie-up and ending public meeting at the end of this project when we're all done, so we can kind of give a summary to the public of the progress and what was performed on the lake.
Just to add to what Tiffany just mentioned, we also needed a registration in the state of Florida. So the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services had to issue, had to approve the product for use and sale in the state of Florida for us even to go to the FWC, or the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, to get a permit.
And of course, in addition to all of that, the products are certified by the international certification of the National Scientific Foundation. Sanitation Foundation, the NSF 60, for the use in raw drinking water. So we basically meet, in that sense, the highest standards, and in many countries around the world, US included, these products and the Lake Oxy, which we're going to use in Minneola, can be used in much more sensitive, so to speak, water bodies that are not only for recreation, but also for consumption.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Harrell. We're going to circle back around now to Cynthia Davis, and her next question is, how do we communicate with you since we live on the lake?
So we provided, I think the slide is still on. We've provided an email. We have a plan, still a blueprint, to create an app where local residents can put on pictures and basic information if and when they encounter something that is out of the ordinary. For now, we'll have to settle with the email that is presented here on the screen.
Minneola@bgtex.com.
Great, thank you for that. Next, Ron Hart, and I believe this question has already been answered. So just real quick, if you could remind us, when is the projected start date for treatment?
The early September.
Okay, thank you. Early September. All right, and next we will go to Martha Harnett, and her next question is, what do homeowners need to do to help the lake be healthier? Great question.
Keep the water clean, don't pollute, be good to each other. It'll all help. Look, the lake is sick. It has been contaminated for years. I'm not familiar with the legal infrastructure in Florida and what it means to be a homeowner on the shores of the lake. I know in the United States there are quite a few places where there are issues, and in Florida where there are issues with broken septic tanks that are leaking straight into the lake. It's bad. You don't want to go into water that raw sewage is running into it, obviously. Toxic algal blooms is one of the symptoms that occur when a lake is sick. So obviously, to the extent that that excess nutrients, definitely raw sewage or wastewater, can be prevented from seeping into the lakes and the waterways, that would be ideal. Our role within the scope of this this situation is to take one very problematic symptom of this illness and reduce it and allow the lake to heal itself from a biodiverse point of view. The question of toxic chemicals that may be spilled into the water, this is something that we are not equipped to handle, and that is off the mandate that we were given.
Just to emphasize, for the scope of this project, we would appreciate any input from you, even just any comments, anything that we can suggest. We'll be more than happy to try to answer those and meet those needs. All we wish for you guys is just to enjoy a healthy, clean lake, enjoy it. When we were there several times, we've seen a lot of boating activities, people using jet skis, rowing, canoeing, swimming. You have a beautiful, beautiful beach. And we just want you to all to enjoy it and keep enjoying it for a long time.
Great, thank you guys. We have one question. I apologize, I missed this name on the first go around. This is from T. Lundquist. And T. Lundquist asks, will the district be able to apply the products themselves eventually, or do they have an ongoing contract with Blue Green Water Technology?
It's an ongoing contract with Blue Green Water Technologies. We're hoping that moving forward in the future, we will be able to move the responsibility to the local authorities to the extent they would like to take that responsibility. And we will be able to continue providing remote support with satellite remote sensing and additional tools that are at play in this project.
Great, thank you. I think next in line here we have Ron Hart, and his next question is, how is the product selective for cyanobacteria and not impact green algae?
As I mentioned before, hydrogen peroxide, I think the question was asked before. Hydrogen peroxide is very selective against cyanobacteria because cyanobacteria are very sensitive to oxidative stress, not like any other organism.
So just to wrap up, what we mentioned, and I hope I mentioned that also during the presentation. So the prolonged oxidative stress, it has to be prolonged. And it's a low grade. It's minute. It's really small, or sort of fraction of a 1 ppm concentration in the water. That is enough to only affect the cyanobacteria. Other organisms are by far less sensitive to that oxidative stress and will not be affected by the treatment. And again, the active ingredient, the hydrogen peroxide, dissolves quickly to water and oxygen, and its effect will not be long lasting. This is why, again, this is an eco-friendly product, because it does not persist or accumulate in the environment.
Great, thank you very much, Waleed. All right, we're coming up on the end of our session, and we have several more excellent questions waiting in the queue. And again, just to our audience, we will get to all of these questions, and they will be posted and answered on our website. But at this time, I'd like to thank very much our panel for their answers during the session, and I will turn it back over to Dr. Dauberful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany, and thank you everyone for participating in this public meeting and for all of your excellent questions and comments. As Tiffany said, we will try to get to everyone and post answers on our website, SJRWMD.com. Again, this recording will also be posted on our website, and you can find more information on the Lake Minneola project by using the search bar on our St. Johns River Water Management District website. So with that, I think we will close it out. I appreciate the excellent presentation from Blue Green Water Technologies, and I look forward to, as they do, a clean lake. So thank you very much, everyone.